Alright, so Schwarzenegger has his comeback movie, and then Stallone's all like, yeah, it's a pretty good shot, let me show you how it's done, Bullet to the Head. So Bullet to the Head stars Sylvester Stallone, and it's ultimately his comeback movie. It's like the last stand for Schwarzenegger, but for Stallone. And this is a total harken back to 80s action movies. It doesn't get more 80s action movie than this. It's Stallone who's a mercenary, and he gets teamed up with a cop because they're both trying to go after the same people because the guy killed Stallone's partner. And now we have our 80s action cop mercenary movie. It is that 80s. It is so 80s that all you hear is Ronald Reagan, AIDS, and boomboxes. It's that 80s. Now, if you remember, I gave Last Stand a little bit of flack because I was like, yeah, I get what they're going for, Arnold's supposed to be coming back, but this movie really wasn't what I remember him for. But I gotta say, Bullet to the Head, exactly what I like about 80s action movies. This is what I want to remember Stallone for. This movie was kick-ass. Is it great? No. Who wrote this bullshit? I have no idea, but I can tell you this. It's someone who knew how to have fun. I walked away from this movie going, Stallone still got it. In fact, it feels like he hits harder now than he ever did back in the day. And I gotta give props to the sound people, the sound mixers and the sound editors in this movie. Very few times do I ever pay homage to the unsung heroes who are the sound people in a movie. But in this movie, I will give you guys props. Sound people in Bullet to the Head. I salute you. These hits are brutal and they're nasty and you just feel like they're cracking bones. The bad guy in this movie is the guy who plays Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. This guy is menacing and evil and actually he's kind of a smartass. Where you're just like, you're a big guy and we're fighting and we're breaking each other's faces. Did you just throw sarcasm my way? Did you, douche? But I like that in a good villain. This guy really played it up. He did it well. Sometimes the shaky cam gets a little bit much where you're like, all right, we're doing that whole close quarter shaky cam thing. It's happening right now, but it only happens a few times in the movie. It doesn't actually override them. It's not like you walk away going, the action was bullshit. It was all shaky cam, because it wasn't. None of that Alex Cross shit, none of that here. There's something about this movie that reminded me of Hard Boiled. It's really nothing like Hard Boiled, but there's something about it that reminded me of Hard Boiled. I think it's the scene where a bunch of guys had semi-automatic weapons and they're all shooting at Stallone and you count and you're like, all right, everyone has shot their gun 31 times. Unlimited ammo, like Hard Boiled. And 80s movies, which are awesome. It's like I look at Stallone in this movie like that senile old guy who still thinks he's young and badass, like, yeah, he can still kick ass. But he does, and so you're like, okay, I guess you can. It's like in Last Stand, they wanted to play up and admit the fact that Arnold's old, and so now this is how it is. He's a small town sheriff. And all that comeback, but kind of a nerfed down comeback kind of way. This movie's like, no, Stallone's still young and shit. And well, he's old, but he acts young. But it totally works. For your enjoyment, you walk away going, yeah, Stallone still kicks ass, and that's all I wanted to see. Sometimes the cop who's paired up with Stallone is ultimately Stallone's partner in this movie. He's okay. Not like you walk away going, the Oscar goes to that guy. But the movie doesn't take itself seriously to the point where you're like, you let it slide. Because you're like, yeah, things like that can slide in a movie that's a total throwback to 80s action movies. It's such an homage to old school that you feel like griping about things like that in this movie would be like griping about Mega Man 9 because it has 8-bit graphics. It's almost the point. So a cliched script, cheesy dialogue, badass Stallone, harkening back to old school with a really menacing villain and really sweet fights and action and guns and things that I wanted to see in a Stallone comeback movie. I will say Bullet to the Head is a great time, no alcohol required. When I was a kid, you were on one of two teams. You were either Team Schwarzenegger or Team Stallone. When I was a kid, I was always Team Schwarzenegger. I always thought he was way more badass. But in looking at their movies now and what they produce and how they are, I gotta say Team Stallone. Dude's just more badass now. He hasn't lost it. So how are you guys? Now that Stallone and Schwarzenegger are trying to make their comebacks now and they're trying to get into action movies again, what team are you on? Stallone or Schwarzenegger? Who's more badass? Who's more your guy? Whoever it is, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.